unjalo wafar, awutale unjalo nje, awutale 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 unjalo wafar, awutale unjalo wafar, awutale unjalo nje, 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 awutale unjalo
Njalo Bafana, for those that don't know Ndebele, it says, let it stay like that, boys. Wow, wonderful. What a way of welcoming all of us this beautiful resort town of Victoria Falls. Well, my name is Herbert Mazonde. I'll be your pilot for the next 3 days, and we'll be cruising at a speed of 800,000 kilometers per hour. And we'll definitely be at least 2 centimeters above sea level. Right, shall we all stand? We want to begin this beautiful August gathering by singing the national anthem. I believe all of us are proud of it, and it's proper that we begin by singing the national anthem. For the sake of those that are still learning the words, we've tried to engage media so that at least they give us some audio to help us sing the national anthem. Shall we sing the national anthem? Thank you. Shall we pray? Father God, we thank you for this wonderful gathering. We commit it into your hands. We pray that you lead us and guide us by your Spirit. Give us your wisdom even as we deliberate on various issues affecting our nation. We pray for wisdom and guidance by your Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Please take your seat. When we were singing the national anthem, I got confused because I'm Shona and I married Ndebele, and so there was a debate in me as to whether I should use my mother language or my wife language. And it appears I've been colonized because I ended up singing in Ndebele. So that's the power of our wonderful wives. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is our first day and our first session of the 6th round of the CEO Africa Roundtable, and I believe that all of us are raring to go, and we look forward to even many more presentations that will take place. Just before I ask the next person to come, when I was coming here, I was just reflecting on a Bible character called Esther. This lady was in the high levels, in the palace there, but there was a crisis that was affecting the nation. And her first reaction was to distance herself and say, it doesn't concern me, I'm okay up there in the palace. But there came a gentleman called Mordecai who said a statement that says, you were born for such a time as this, and if you don't rise up to offer a solution now, help shall come from somewhere else. And then he says, don't think you are safe out there. I believe all of us as CEO, first option could be just to distance ourselves over what's happening in our nation and say, I'm okay up there, it doesn't concern me. But I believe all of us are affected by what is happening in our nation. But more than focusing on describing, the problems. I believe this gathering of CEOs is a gathering of decision makers. It's a gathering of people who want to talk solutions. And that is why we are here, to talk about solutions. But before I go very far, we are in a beautiful hotel, and there is a request from hotel management to welcome us in a special way. And then after that, we will invite His Worship, the Mayor of Victoria Falls, Somvelo Dlamini, to also give us their welcome remarks. So for now, a round of applause for the hotel team.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to first start by saying all protocol is observed. Right. My name is Nkosi Moyo. I am the hotel manager, and I would firstly want to thank the organizers of the CEOs Roundtable for entrusting us with yet another opportunity to host this event, this highly powered event of ours. What I'm going to do is just to introduce the team that I have with me, which is the team of our senior team here, who will be helping me host you. For everything that happens right, all credit goes to them. For anything that goes wrong, I'm responsible. Thank you. Right, I'll start with the first gentleman there. His name is James Kuanda. He's our front office manager. I'm sure for those that came on the early morning flight, he made sure that your rooms were ready in the morning. Thanks, James. And then the second gentleman there is Mr. Bernard Makiwa. Mr. Bernard Makiwa is our executive housekeeper, and he will be responsible for the cleanliness of the hotel during your stay with us here today. Then the next gentleman in glasses is Mr. Andy Howe. Mr. Andy Howe is our facilities manager. He makes sure that all the screws are tight enough, all the bulbs are working, anything for your convenience is in order. The water, the air conditioning, he is the man in charge. If it's okay, keep it with him. If it's bad, blame me. Then, the lady in glasses again is Mrs. Nogutaba Nyandoro. She's our events banqueting manager. She is the one who was working closely with the organizers to put this conference together, and I'm sure it will be a successful one. And then the last gentleman is Mr. Mtandazo Shoko. He is our security manager, and will make sure that for the next 2-3 days, you will be safe in the hotel. So we assure you of your safety. Right, thank you very much. Lastly, just to say, I wish you a very successful conference over the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the hotel management. They introduced the security manager last, so you are safe. Let me repeat to say you are safe except your tie. The reason why your tie is not safe is because Gary Thompson is here. Those of you remember last year, someone walked away without a tie because he auctioned it. So everything else is safe except that hold your tie tightly, especially when you see Gary Thompson's face. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor that we have distinguished government officials that are here, distinguished CEO Africa Roundtable board members that are here, and many dignitaries that are here. Allow me to also say, not protocol, but all protocols observed. But since most of you flew, I'm sure there were no potholes. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, I'll invite the mayor if he has arrived. Last time I checked, he has not yet arrived. Has he arrived? The mayor. Help me identify. Oh yes, a round of applause as we welcome the mayor to also welcome us to this conference. Keep on clapping until he arrives.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Speaker of the National Assembly, the Minister of Industry and Commerce, members of Parliament, senior government officials here present, CEO Africa Roundtable Chairman, Mr. Oswald Bina, CEO Africa Roundtable Board of Governors, Chief Executive Officers and delegates to the 6th CEO Roundtable. It is with utmost pleasure and humility that I welcome you to Victoria Falls. It is my hope that you traveled well and are enjoying what our beautiful town has to offer in terms of hospitality. Our town is honored to host the 6th edition of one of the most prestigious events in our African business calendar, the CEO Africa Business Roundtable. CEO Africa Roundtable enables participants to exchange their views and opinions on the issues affecting the economic development of the continent. This initiative deserves much applause as it ushers the peer-and-peer engagement, smart partnerships, capacity building, business networks, investment facilitation, and policy dialogue. These factors are critical to the development of our economy. I draw your attention to the theme championing the economic development across Africa, whose major thrust lies in improving lives of people in our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria Falls has been designated as the special economic zone, paving way for an increased trade balance, employment, increased investment and job creation. It is encouraging to join efforts towards deliberating on issues significant to the growth of our economy. New ideas are vital to the growth of our economy, and I strongly believe that you will come up with strategies that harness reforms impacting various sectors of the economy. I urge you to take advantage of the exchange of ideas and direct that information to come up with positive policies for the growth of our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will take this time off your busy schedules to explore our rich tourist attractions and adrenaline rushing activities, including a tour of one of the 7 wonders of the world, the mighty Victoria Falls, and a walk with the lions, elephant rides, the amazing bungee jumping, and many more. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Now that we have been welcomed by the Mayor, at this juncture we want to invite the CEO Africa Roundtable Chairperson to come and give us his opening remarks. And may I also request him soon after that to also introduce the Minister. A round of applause, gentlemen and ladies.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bina. I'm the chairperson of the Board of Governors for the CEO Africa Roundtable. Allow me at this juncture to recognize the Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Jacob Mudenda. Our parent minister, I think is yet to join us, Honorable Ndlovu. I also would like to recognize Honorable Chassi, our Deputy Minister of Transport and Infrastructure Development, members of Parliament. We are very lucky in the House today to have those that I have interacted with, 3 chairpersons of critical committees in Parliament. We have Honorable Mona, Honorable Sako, and Honorable Biti. Welcome, sirs. Senior government officials here. I've also seen permanent secretaries, Dr. Bizo, and colleagues there. His Worship, the Mayor of the beautiful city of Victoria Falls. You're welcome, sir. You are welcome to the CEO Africa Roundtable, sir. Fellow board members at the round table. I also recognize past presidents of BMOs. I've seen past President Sibanda, past President Imalawa. I'm not sure who else is in there, you're recognized. The Chief Executive Officer of the round table, colleagues, comrades, and friends. The CEO Africa Roundtable, ransom, deter, is well articulated, advancing economic development across Africa, which is attained through a vision of a variety or a broad plethora of policy dialogue positions, global economic reviews, trade and investment missions, as well as transformational leadership. Your presence here today is actually testimony of a commitment of being custodians of the status quo, but rather of socio-economic transformation. Various economic agents are gathered here because they have something to say, as quoted by Plato the philosopher. Wise men speak because they have something to say, but fools speak because they have to say something. Zimbabwe has primarily twin problems, which are trade imbalances, fiscal imbalances, outside, an elephant in the living room, political turbulence, and corruption. It is believed that politics and economics are intricately twinned and interwoven. It is against this background that the CEO Africa Roundtable, again this year, deemed it fit at this very venue to have this momentous discourse, to share ideas, and indeed make sure that we develop solutions as we go into the future. In support of this spectacular gathering, Socrates says, strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, weak minds discuss people. Thus, a panacea for the aforementioned problems, the CEO Africa Roundtable is calling upon triangulation of the following areas of concern. Fiscal austerity. The perpetual budget deficit shows lack of appropriate fiscal discipline. There is need to redefine government expenditure and its priorities. Not today, not tomorrow, but yesterday. Extravagance is a noun which simply is defined as lack of discipline in spending money or utilization of resources. Austerity and posterity are two sides of each other. Priorities matter to engender trust, confidence, and certainty. Touching the budget deficit and national debt, the country continues to be highly indebted, with total debt above $17 billion. The country's domestic debt has grown to more than 3,000% since 2012, from $276 million to $9.5 billion. This makes the country's domestic debt significantly larger than its external debt, which currently stands at $7.4 billion. Even though the 2% is expected to assist in reducing domestic borrowing, the domestic debt still remains substantially high. and indeed very unsustainable. Citizens, corporate citizens rather, are duty-bound to contribute to government revenues in the form of taxes. However, the four canons of good tax system, which are equity, convenience, certainty, and the economy in general, are indispensable as postulated by Sir Adam Smith in 1776. Yes, the government has done well in containing budget deficit of late, but this may not be enough. Policymakers are urged to craft policies with investors and the general population in mind. The 2% tax, for instance, is only affecting transactions paid through transfers, but cash transactions are exempted. This defies the canon of equity in accordance with Sir Adam Smith. Dynamic inconsistencies should be minimized at all costs as they scare away investors. As monetary authorities, key currency decisions have to be made now. The severe financial market distortions are harming our businesses. The surrender requirements are killing the goose that lays the golden egg. The Roundtable has put in a position, a paper that we called Call to Action. In that paper, we've made critical proposals, and these proposals, as we wait patiently for the monetary authorities to put out their statement, we are watching. A revival of parastatals. Parastatals are actually enablers to private sector and organized business. We are very lucky today. We've got the deputy minister in a ministry that at some point was running 13 parastatals. I hope it's still the same position today. The insistence on an parastatals are failing to produce and they need revival. Their failure to produce might be emanating from bad governance. The parastatal reform program is outlined in the TSP, should be done now and should be done now. The currency shenanigans. The insistence on a one-to-one exchange rate and hence resistance to allow the market to determine exchange rate between the RTGS and the US dollar has precipitated an effervescence in the economy, which if not attended to, will seriously dislocate the pillars on which our economy rests. This in itself is self-defeating and a catalyst of deindustrialization. The Zimbabwean dollar failed during the hyperinflation era, where the official rate reached 231 or thereabouts million%. The multi-currency regime then was used to bail out the situation. The inflation rate since 2009 was fluctuating between 5% and thereabouts. Soon after, the RBZ introduced the rogue bond note. The bond note was introduced as an export incentive. The issuance of bond notes was said to be backed by a $200 million Afri-Exim Bank facility. In our conversations, there are legalities around that. The country has a responsibility to address the tricky question of currency reform in an inclusive manner to ameliorate the situation. The question goes beyond the name of the currency, but also foreign exchange management and financial markets pricing. In addition, certain economic fundamentals need to be addressed first if we are to introduce our own currency. This is not an easy undertaking, but it cannot be postponed any longer. Otherwise, the implications on the economy may be too grievous to contemplate. The mixed bag of feelings of economists has to be factored in. There is a conversation on the Rand Monetary Union, having our own currency and adoption of the US dollar, which the general populace has already adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in here today to be part of this decision. Gone are the days when a few people sit in a corner office and make decisions that affect all the citizens both individual and corporate, in the country. Our time to be able to contribute to this particular position is now. International re-engagement. The only way to engage the international community is walking the talk. I believe we are being waited for in the Commonwealth. Currently, Zimbabwe is not a favorable investment destination due to the high country risk. We need to rebrand Zimbabwe. We need to walk the talk. I'm happy to say that the Roundtable has tried to do 2 investment missions, one to the United States of America and the other one to South Africa. We were also lucky to have met not only the private sector and our colleague diasporans in the United States, but we were hosted by the State Department of America and the Congress staffers. So we have a fair appreciation of what the political considerations are, as well as the business considerations are. Reports have been sent to the highest office and the related government departments. As a nation, we do have what it takes to transform our economy. Zimbabwe is endowed with a variety of natural resources. We need to define a credible way to exploit some of these to the benefit of those that will come after us. National dialogue. Clearly, the country is divided into various platforms with emotions reigning high as the injured population recollects the nightmares of the bearer checks and the wiping off of their lifelong savings back in 2009. As hard as it may be, it is important that as a country, we make a collective decision on which path to take on this matter. The problems we are faced with are now new. In 2008, after the elections, we had a similar situation. Dialogue and mutual understanding amongst political players ensued. If dialogue worked then, why not now? This is supported by some philosopher, Plato. There is no harm in repeating a good thing. The only way of illuminating this nation is to put away selfish, individual, and sectorial interests and motives and have our nation first. We must agree on a basket of national interest issues. The philosopher went on to say, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are actually afraid of light. As the round table and the chairman of the board of governors, I call upon you, ladies and gentlemen, who are gathered here today, to remove your gloves and engage in frank, factual, no-holds-barred dialogue in pursuit of solutions to the challenges that bedevil us today. This is your platform. Make good use of it. I actually want to thank sincerely and wholeheartedly an esteemed man amongst us, who is a public servant, our Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Mudenda. After our 2 investment missions, our government departments are impermeable. There is amazing level of arrogance. We went there, we met the Speaker, and we said, sir, we can't even meet some of your colleagues. After his intervention, our doors were opened. Help me, colleagues, to thank the man that has helped us. I must also thank those government departments and ministers who have actually come to the table. Our Minister of Industry. I think the board will concur with me that the man has been really up to serious engagement, not only with the roundtable, but with other BMOs. I want, on behalf of the board, to express our deepest regrets. We still are trying to get a meeting with the Minister of Finance, and his role is very critical. We want to speak to him. I'm hoping and trusting that he is going to join us, because this is his constituency. We need him here. Gone are the days when we work in silos. We must create Team Zimbabwe. I'm confident that this conference, after all is said and done, will change and refocus our nation from trivial issues to serious national economic discourse. I thank you so very much.
Another round of applause for the Chairman, CEO Africa Round Table. Thank you so much. I'll make an assumption that since the Honorable Minister who is following on the program has not been introduced, I suppose we'll wait for the appropriate time for that. Let's proceed nonetheless. Maybe just a few housekeeping issues while we prepare Dr. Munyeza to come and moderate the first session. The chairman has asked for candid talk, no holds barred. CEOs are decision makers. Your idea or ideas, they matter. I want to encourage the delegates here to value each other's opinion. It may look far-fetched in your opinion, but you know what? Let's borrow a statement from a book written by George Orwell, Animal Farm, where he said all animals are equal. So I think that will help us quite a lot. Of course, as the program proceeds, just as the book also proceeded, later on, things changed from all animals are equal. Then there was a phrase that was added later on. Then they said, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So you will see those that are more equal than others. Wonderful. Right, just to clean up housekeeping issues, just as Dr. Munyeza prepares to come, there has been a request in terms of internet password. The password is DANDEMUTANDE. I'm too fast. Can I ask the media team to put it on the screen? I think that will help quite a lot. That will help quite a lot. And then also, for those speakers or presenters that have something on PowerPoint, can we request that you submit your articles to the media team before every session, so that at least we have a smooth running of the program. So if you know you've got a PowerPoint presentation, please submit your articles to the media team, and they will allocate it to the appropriate session that you have there. We are honored this afternoon to have the ambassador of Nigeria. Forgive me if I don't pronounce the name correctly. It's been long since I went to Nigeria. Let's put our hands together and recognize and welcome Her Excellency Janet Besong Adeka, the ambassador of Nigeria. I think we can do better than that. Wonderful. May I also ask for your attention as far as page 27 is concerned. We'll be mentioning those wonderful companies that have made this occasion to be a success, our wonderful sponsors. So as the program unrolls, we'll be mentioning them one by one to just celebrate their goodwill as far as supporting this function is concerned. Without further ado, may I take this opportunity to invite Dr. Munyeza. He's a man of many hats, but allow me to just say he's chairman of Vinyl Investments. He's going to moderate our first session, and I'll also ask him to invite members of this session that are going to participate in the session. So let's put our hands together as we welcome Dr. Shingi Munyeza. As you can see, there is a common height in all the people that come this side, so you might want to change your height.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mazonde, for your kindness. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to recognize all the VIPs that are here, speaker, ministers of government, members of parliament, and indeed the distinguished speakers that will be gracing us at this very important conference. Mine is a simple task, is to moderate. Moderation means that I will not speak much. I will quiz. I will be able to highlight some points. The big debate we have this afternoon is achieving a prosperous and integrated Zimbabwe based on an inclusive growth and sustainable development. And I guess to deliberate this, we have a very exciting panel of speakers and people who will be engaging on this topic. We have, and I'm going to call them up to come up front and take their seats. Accordingly, it's always nice to come back home at the Elephant Hills. This is home for me. Honorable Advocate Jacob Mudenda, who is a Speaker of the Parliament of Zimbabwe. Mr. Speaker, sir, would you come up? And a round of applause as he comes up. I see there are some negotiations. Are we having them there or are they coming up here? Mr. Chairman, help me out.
Can I get a teacher?
Okay, fine. Fantastic. Well, as a township preacher, I'm very much used to programs changing. So, and at this point in time, I've just been advised I'm a man under authority, so I will submit to that authority. The chairman has just advised that we will have the speaker to address us. We'll make some contribution, and then we'll call the panel afterwards. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, would you mind come up and give your address? Thank you. A round of applause for him.
There's one observation that I make, and that is There are two very bright lights, and I can't see my fellow delegates the other side. I'm not sure whether that was intended or not. Second thing, Gary, I want to plead with you that you don't take away my tie. Because this tie is very special, from someone special. You can charge me any price for me to return my tie. Provided the figures don't have more than 2 notes. The Reverend Munyeza, I thought he was not only a reverend, but also a prophet, who is able to prophesy on the intended adjustments to the program. But he's not an Elijah. The mayor of our beautiful municipality, His Worship Lamini, Worship Lamini, who won resoundingly, first as a councillor and as a mayor, and in the process eliminated our candidates from the other side completely. But you are our mayor nonetheless, and I hope you remain inclusive. Chairman of the CEO Africa Roundtable, Mr. Bina, when he was giving us his opening short speech and quoting a number of philosophers, I thought he must change from Mr. to become Philosopher Bina. There's so much knowledge about philosophy. I recognize your entire board that is fully behind you in all these efforts. I recognize honorable ministers here present, chairpersons of parliamentary committees, Honorable Biti, Honorable Sako, and Honorable Mona. Please don't put these gentlemen in a fix, because when I'm there, they have to defer to me in case they go offside from a parliamentary point of view. I didn't say I would say order to them. Your Excellencies, members of the CEO Africa Roundtable, captains of industry and commerce, members from the academia, distinguished panelists, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. This year's CEO Africa Roundtable theme is achieving a prosperous and integrated Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Explicitly attenuates the centrality of economic prosperity in Africa, which is calculated to complement the hard-won political freedom that Africa attained. Economic freedom has historically been proven to be the cutting-edge weapon against pervasive poverty, underdevelopment, and civil strife, which is associated with our African continent. This economic freedom needs to be upscaled in order to achieve economic prosperity. It is a well-known axiom that to craft strategies to prosper Africa, the first stratagem is to have a vision of the Africa we want, which must reshape the way we think about the economic ecosystem in Africa. I am therefore honored to speak today at this important gathering of eminent business leaders, strategic thinkers, and those Africa expects to be visionary and innovative leaders. My presentation will focus on the nature of the business leadership capable of taking glorified economic destiny. That glorified economic destiny for Africa is the prosperous Africa which rises above the minimum human development indicator thresholds. Its focus entails accelerated improvement in the living standards, inclusive growth, and sustainable development. Inclusive growth was defined by the OECD as economic growth that is distributed fairly across society and creates opportunities for all. On the other hand, sustainable development, according to the World Commission on Environment and Development's Brundtland Report, opines that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, it is a transformative development for the current generations that is transformational of itself as a secure pedestal which leapfrogs into the next generations in future. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Africa currently grapples with problems of acute poverty and underdevelopment attributed to the post-colonial disasters of economic malfeasance, maladministration, lawlessness, unequal access to wealth, because of the concentration of resources in the hands of the elite, unconstitutionalism, illegality, and absence of the rule of law. For genuine inclusive growth to be actualized, not only is it imperative to decisively deal with the above-mentioned enemies of comprehensive economic growth, but also to have leading stewards who exude high standards of corporate governance ethics. As we think of ways to achieve a prosperous Africa, we need to be alive to the United Nations Population Report of 2017, which estimates that Africa's population will double to 2 billion by 2050. Consequently, this growth needs to be matched by commensurate economic prosperity and job creation. Otherwise, this dramatic demographic expansion could only be a social and political catastrophe unless the first aspiration of Africa's Agenda 2063 is brought to play by the Pan-Africanist CEO Africa Roundtable visionary leadership. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is enigmatic and unfathomable that in the sea of such underdevelopment, Africa is endowed with a palpable, rich, and diverse natural resource base on which the livelihood of its people should depend on and be the source of continual prosperity. Ironically, these resources are in hot demand globally. Not only does Africa have a huge demographic dividend, the continent is home to the world's largest arable landmass, second largest and longest rivers, the Nile and the Congo, and the second largest tropical forests. In this context, I challenge the CEO Africa Roundtable to put together a very dynamic team of CEOs to engage the DRC government with the view of gingering that government to agree on the immediate construction of the Inga Dam. Studies have proved that when constructed, that dam would generate sufficient electricity for the whole of Africa. Africa desperately needs reliable electricity supply in our mines, industries, agriculture, irrigation, and other socio-economic sectors. This will bolster the intra-trade among African countries in the context of the envisioned Africa Continental Free Trade Area. That team of CEOs should strategize with the African Union Commission so that this continental huge project can quickly have the imprimatur of the African Union. There is no better way of creating an inclusive growth for a prosperous Africa. Additionally, the rich oil and natural gas whose reserves constitute approximately 8% and 7% of the world's stock, respectively, should boost the Inga Dam outputs. Now, some of you here might be saying, this is a dream, but dreams can be translated into reality as long as we believe in those dreams. Furthermore, Africa has approximately 30% of the Earth's remaining mineral resources. The CEO Africa Roundtable should be the champion for geomagnetic mineral surveys, which should clearly tell Africa the real value of our mineral resources. relevant universities in Africa must couple up with the chosen CEOs to start that mining crusade. In tandem, the quintessential nature of the paradox of plenty and the Dutch disease, which still persists in Africa, arises from the very high volatility of commodity prices, economic malfeasance, and conflict, which further strengthens the case for dynamic stewardship, both at national, corporate, and continental levels, and calls for robust corporate responses from entrepreneurial CEOs from the Africa Round Table. Faced with such brutal reality, the CEO delegates must tell each other the blunt truth, must tell each other here the blunt truth, and provide naked, honest answers to Africa's economic challenges. The chairman of the CEO Africa Roundtable spoke about the need for national dialogue. Let us cause that dialogue to happen through your pressure. You have to pressure all parties, particularly these key stakeholders, to say business is not happening because of the polarization that is taking place. We want dialogue as business people. That voice is silent at the moment. I'm not sure about that document, Call to Action, I think it is called. Let that document speak to action in truth, and that you demand dialogue. We cannot keep on blaming imperial powers forever. It is no secret that peace, security, and accountable governance and social cohesion are not the only prerequisites for Africa's prosperity we so desire. Magnetic leadership and stewardship are equally more pertinent and desirable of the CEOs of the Africa Roundtable. As the Bahamian evangelist, Dr. Mnyeza, I'm persuaded by the evangelists like yourself. This one persuaded me to bring this message to you. And his name is Dr. Miles Munro. What did he say? I quote him. Leadership is like beauty. It is hard to define, but you know it when you see it, unquote. And my question is, why? The answer, it is because you see it through its physical, moral, and intellectual magnetism. Real leaders attract. Real leaders attract. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is a call to action for this crop of CEOs to develop an authentic ideology that fosters the 2063 development agenda for Africa, which consolidates and builds the beckoning for Africa's economic independence. Its ideology seeks to improve the lives of ordinary people, of ordinary citizens and not engaging in the futile orgy of intellectual leadership idealism. Africa needs CEOs who are innovative and creative if the continent has to prosper and attain middle income status, which is the proxy for prosperity. It is rather disheartening to note that approximately 47% of the African population is living on an income bracket of $1.90 or less. We need to visualize an African continent where all the 55 states of the African Union are in the upper income bracket, with GNI per capita of between 3,896 up to 12,088 cents. Our continent longs for a crop of CEOs who can see beyond the ambiguity and challenges of today to an empowering picture of tomorrow. Such type of corporate visionary leaders permeate and propagate their vision to the team and the organization itself for the CEO Africa Roundtable. Now, I want you to mark the wisdom of Dolly Parton, an actress and singer, who succinctly affirmed that, and I quote here, "If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader," unquote. I'll repeat that. If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Are the CEOs of the African Roundtable hankering for that type of leadership legacy? Is a question we have to answer. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me at this juncture to single out some examples of visionary leadership in the mold of Elon Musk, the chief executive of SpaceX and Tesla Motors. Musk's vision was to move beyond the status quo and in the process revolutionized SpaceX and Tesla Motors, which had faced bankruptcy in 2008. It is indisputable that Tesla is now trumping Ford and General Motors with gross profit margins of well over 20%, while SpaceX is now developing the next generation of aerospace systems to take US astronauts to the International Space Station. In his own words, Musk said, and I quote him, "If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. If things are not falling, you are not innovating enough." In Ndebele, the equivalent would be kukhubeka uhambayo, ongahambiyo kakhubeki. Equivalent in Shona, chizwa Chiripapi, Chirimsoga. Chiswa Chirimsoga. You have to move to get. And of course the English would say, where there is a way, there is a will. Where there is a will, there is a way. Here in Zimbabwe, we have our own Strive Masiwa, a Zimbabwean entrepreneur and philanthropist who once said, and I quote him, "A vision on its own is not enough. Hard work and dedication is required to make that vision a reality," unquote. Perhaps I would add here, in addition to hard work and dedication, you must exercise and believe. Have personal self-belief. Have personal self-belief. The phenomenal growth of the Econet group of companies is a clear testimony of a vision that has been transformed into reality. Strive Masiwa is therefore an example for us, a decisive visionary leader you must emulate. Little story about Strive. When he conceptualized his company, he applied. Several times he was denied a license. Several times. Then he went to court, the High Court of Zimbabwe. He won. The High Court said he be given a license. When the court had determined, again the licensing authority did not issue that license. He wrote letters attaching the court verdict. No license came until he approached old Josh Nkomo, who raised the matter in cabinet and said, "Why are you not giving the license to this young man, enterprising young man? You must give him. You must give him." And the license was given. In honor of that push, that's why today you have the Joshua Mkabuko Scholarship Fund, spending more than $60 million every year to pay for the school fees for the disadvantaged pupils and students. Don't give up. Don't give up. What you should give up among some of you is the tweeting that you are doing now. Some of you are over tweeting. Like a former teacher can see who is listening. You can only respond when you listen. And the Almighty gave us one mouth, but 2 ears, because listening is greater than talking and tweeting. Look at the phenomenal growth of Econet Wireless. Huh? And this young man, Strive Masiwa, was writing on a vision he believed in, inspired to change the world. Inspired to change the world. That's why today he's the only billionaire from Zimbabwe. Now, related to that, decisive leadership reminds me also of the former president, 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, who acclaimed as follows, and I quote him, "In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing." Wow. Don't be over mesmerized, okay? Thus, in championing Africa's inclusive growth for prosperity, be visionary, dedicated, and decisive corporate leaders. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the world economy today is driven by digital technologies, predicated on the ever-advancing information communication technology. This therefore calls for a crop of CEOs who are ICT compliant and are driven by the zealous belief in science and technology in their corporate world. You will have to excuse me. I should be one of you because I'm a chief executive officer for Parliament. I should be using, I think, an iPad here or a computer. But I'm very conservative. Not that I don't believe in ICT. Now, distinguished guest, another related tenet of principled leadership is that of innovation. We should contribute to Africa's prosperity through inclusive economic growth. Now, the dictionary definition of innovation is as follows: the process of translating an idea. You must be able to translate an idea. It shouldn't remain here in your mind. Translate it. Or it's an invention into a good or service that creates value or for which customers will pay. If today you have a 1950 Mercedes-Benz, say 4 of them, and we have got 2019 Mercedes-Benz, you cannot go for the 1951 because it has lost value. Unless you believe that you're going to live long and make it what? A vintage car. And hopefully after some time you start auctioning it. But you will go for the latest because it has value, new technology, and is faster. There's no doubt that the CEOs who applied innovative strategies in their corporate entities harvested telling results. In this regard, let us emulate the CEOs of companies such as the Amazon, Netflix, Apple, Google, Skype, Alibaba, Facebook, and Econet Wireless. innovation created value for their money, so invested in their companies. Similar giant companies must emerge from Africa in order to drive economic prosperity for the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO for Africa Roundtable may be endowed with very sound leadership qualities, but if they don't interface with the political leadership consistently and constantly, they are bound to fail. 40 years ago in China, the private sector engaged President Deng Xiaoping. Deng was a courageous and a bold leader who responded to the private sector with the radical economic reforms which embraced the market economy. His comrades in the Communist Party almost doubted his intention. They were asking, is he still with us? Achiri nesuere, uloke lati hini, kumbe wapanduka. Now, that is why Gayo, who worked for Deng as a translator from 1983 to 1988, aptly summarized the former leader's pragmatic approach by stating that, and I quote, Deng's basic idea was that you miss a major point if you are bogged down by the debate between socialism and capitalism. I should have said switch off your phones, but I thought you were responsible members. So there was no debate between socialism and capitalism. And what did you say further? What really matters is what will work. What matters is what will work. What will bring food to the Chinese people, unquote. Instead of Chinese, they put African people. Instead of African people, put Zimbabwean people. That is what matters. And I've always remained mesmerized and confounded by his famous philosophical quote. And what does it say? It doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice. Doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, so long as it does what? Catches the mice. Now the question is, among us here CEOs, what type of cat are we? What type of cat are we? And I say to you, distinguished guests, CEOs, go out and catch the economic mice for Africa's prosperity. Today, China boasts of $13 trillion of gross domestic product and 3.06 of foreign currency reserves. And yet in 1975, good lady, switch off your mic there. Yes, switch off your mic. And you lady there, switch off your mic. You are disturbing my voice production. Now, I was saying, and yet, in 1975, China was less developed than Rhodesia. Only 1975. Honorable Biti will agree with me. He did his research when he was Minister of Finance. That is the challenge I place on you as corporate African leaders. Another beacon of reform for economic prosperity was the 8th and last leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, who was Russia's head of state from 1988 to 1993. Within 5 years, and through the interaction with the private sector, he transformed Russia's economic fortunes. In China, private sector with who? Deng. In Russia, private sector with who? Gorbachev. But Gorbachev went further. He abolished the bureaucratic inertia, which was an obstacle to economic reconstruction, perestroika. The inertia which your chairman of the board talked about. Here are representatives of the private sector who have done a sterling job of economic diplomacy. They come back and say, we want to tell you what we found there. How you can soften up the American establishment. They knock. No one is opening. But at the same time, you begin to question yourself. Is Zimbabwe then open for business? Huh? One day, I'm inspired, Reverend, forgive me. One day, I think President Mnangagwa will go door by door with a big hammer, opening doors of these bureaucrats so that they can open Zimbabwe for business. In the same vein, our universities and technical colleges should act as invention and technology hubs to reverse the Africa case of exporting raw products. By producing new technology and exposing students to that knowledge, universities will not only generate new ideas, but prepare knowledgeable, inventive, and motivated graduates who can carry those ideas into businesses, non-governmental organizations, and into governments. Africa needs more of tertiary institutions in the mode of Massachusetts Institute of Technology in America. CEOs, I implore you, play your role in this regard. You may be surprised to know that even Microsoft Corporation was amazed by inventions that are being churned out by the Harare Institute of Technology students in the areas of mini-chemical, industrial, and manufacturing, most of whom were modeled to respond to the national and industrial challenges the country is facing. The many projects, inventions from chemical, industrial, and mechanical engineering range from mechatronic tobacco grating machines, biogas digesters for the home, to fertilizer making machines. We were once informed in 1215 that the Harare Institute of Technology had begun the commercial production of pharmaceutical drugs using native plants in a development that was likely to substitute expensive drug imports. Where is the private sector to support such cutting-edge innovations from such tertiary institutions? I was also inspired by the story of Delta Corporation when it was mesmerized by a boiler coal weighing system which had been designed by a Lawrence Moyo, a Kwekwe Polytechnic College student in 2015. We have talent in Africa. We have talent in Africa. Reverend, let me conclude. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to invite every CEO to reflect on what they will contribute to Africa's prosperity henceforth. With abundant natural resources at Africa's disposal, what is urgently needed is a visionary and strategic CEO leadership underpinned by innovation and decisiveness. Equally important is the ability of CEOs to engage and debate with political leaders to leverage their political will. Political leaders across the divide so that they can share certain synergies for the sake of Zimbabwe, for the sake of Africa. As we do this, Africa's GDP per capita must improve, and so will be the quality of life in the spheres of human endeavor in Africa. The CEO Africa Roundtable must lead the crusade towards making Africa an economic giant by 2063, if not earlier. Thank you. Atenda siyabonga.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Advocate Jacob Mudenda, for your delivery of this speech. You gave me a hard time because I wanted to stop you much earlier, but I couldn't because of time. But because you are our speaker, I just made sure that we took every word of it, and because it was intended for here. The issue is I'm racing out of time, and you're not the only one. Preachers have the same issue. A preacher once had this problem of long messages, and then the wife decided that she'll cure this problem. So he says, well, I see that you always take long. So let's agree. I'll give you a sweet at the beginning of the service when you start preaching. So when you don't have the sweet under your tongue, it means that you should stop. So along the way, when he was going to go up the stage, the sweet would be put in his pocket, but there was also an incident earlier where his button had also fallen off and he had put it in the pocket. So the same pocket that had a sweet also had a button. So as he was taught by the wife, he then took the button and put it under his tongue. So that sweet never finished at the end. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, I need your cooperation because we now have about 45 minutes to get the other speakers to speak, as well as the rest of us to participate in this important big debate. I might have to ask the chairman for some indulgence to get a bit more time. He's nodding, but without wasting more time, I would like to call upon, we have two more of our panelists who are going to come up here. And to our panelists, we'll engage, and we'll also engage with what the Honorable Speaker of the House of Assembly has also deliberated on. I've been told here you are supposed to speak for 5 minutes. So, Honorable Biti, please, would you come up, speak, and then we'll interact through your speech, what you have delivered. Honorable Tendai Biti is the Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Public Accounts. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Honorable Tendai Biti to the podium.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Speaker, the esteemed Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Chairperson of the CEO Roundtable, Comrade Oswell Bina, and every other guest in the room. The issue before us is the big debate and how we can make Africa a sustainable country. But I think that I want to concentrate on Zimbabwe. And I want to deal about Zimbabwe because of the fundamental problems that we are facing as a country. I think the precondition of any economic progress must surely be the obligation of ensuring that the particular country has a common vision. And I think that this is where Zimbabwe has a problem. We have a contested narrative. We have asymmetries in that narrative. We have a broken down social contract. We are arrested by division, by attrition. And in the past 40 years, we have spent as a nation state so much time arguing with ourselves, creating idioms and languages of delegitimation and exclusion. And as a result of that attrition, as a result of that contested narrative, our GDP figures speak for themselves, of our macroeconomic figures speak for themselves. So I would like to submit that the starting point is that we need to come up with a common vision, and that vision so far is lacking. And I want to submit that at the epicenter of this vision must be the respect of the right to human dignity, which has been codified in Section 50 of the Zimbabwean Constitution. At the epicenter of that common vision is the need to respect each other as individuals, as equal individuals, is to need to respect the rule of law and constitutionalism. And these are things that have been missing in the past 40 years, 38 years of our country's history. We have a duty and an obligation as a country to deal with the fundamental gap, the developmental gap that we are currently facing. And part of the context of this developmental gap is the demographics that now arrest our country. We have a population of 14 million Zimbabweans. By the year 2045, this population would have doubled up. But one of the challenges which we are facing is that the growth in the population figures, the growth in the demographics is not being matched by the growth in employment creation, and never mind the growth or lack of growth in the economy, the GDP growth rate. Every year we are producing at least 500,000 graduates, but we are producing jobs that are less than 5,000 a year. In fact, in the last 3 years, we've actually been destroying jobs. More than 30,000 jobs alone were closed or shut down in the year 2018, that is to say last year. And many industrialists who are in this room know of the many companies that are actually shutting down as of the present moment. Part of the reason being a byproduct of the mishandling of the current issue that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. I also think that it's so important for any country to have strong institutions. I think that the disease, part of the disease that is facing our country at the present moment is the capture of institutions. Our constitution creates, number one, separation of powers between the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. Of these three arms of the state, the poor cousin there is parliament, it is the legislature. I've been sitting in the past few weeks as chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. It is shocking the disdain and disrespect that the executive in particular affords the legislature. You invite ministers or permanent secretaries to come to that committee, they will not come. The last time around, we were to threaten to issue a warrant in terms of the Parliamentary Privileges Act against the permanent secretary. We threatened to arrest him before he actually made an appearance before our committee. On every Wednesday, we are supposed to have question and answer, and the speaker will confirm that a very few ministers actually bother to pay their respect as they are duty bound to do in terms of the constitution. So that's the emasculation of a very important institution. I shall not talk about the judiciary. I don't want to be held in contempt by the Chief Justice, but I'm sure you saw the placards by lawyers a few weeks ago when lawyers had a demonstration. They spoke of command justice. These are things that are happening in our country. There was a time when, as a young lawyer, I would go to our courts and I would know that I was going to lose the case, not because of the quality of my brief, not because of the quality of my case, but simply the client I had and the cause of action that I had. A country can't function like that. We also have in our constitution, chapter 12 institutions. These include the Human Rights Commission, the Anti-Corruption Commission. These include the Gender Commission and the Media Commission. I was very disturbed a few weeks ago when the Human Rights Commission issued a very strong report on the events that had taken place in this country between the 12th of January to around about the 4th of February during the shutdown. That spoke of systemic and systematic torture of the citizen. I was very dismayed by the vicious attack that members of the executive laid across that body. We had very strong statements that were made by the executive. If we are to function as a democracy, and democracy is a precondition to economic development, these institutions must be allowed to do their job. These institutions must be independent and must dispose of their constitutional duty. I call them the fourth estate, the fourth arm of the state. Once you have party-state conflation, and once you have a situation where these commissions are an executive extension of a political party, then you have a disaster in that country. I think one of the fundamental preconditions of a country moving forward is actually democracy. I take democracy to mean the ownership of the state and participatory processes by the citizen. I take the democracy to mean the consent of the citizen being given to those that govern us. I take democracy to mean the contract between the citizen and those that we give the privilege of governing us, not kutitonga. And in my respectful submission, there can never be a country that can be governed and succeed without the consent of the citizen. And where the consent of the citizen is withdrawn, is denied, and is not given, that function, that country cannot function well. My colleagues and I, Dr. Greg Mills, President Olusegun Obasanjo, and Jeffrey Hepps, we have written a book called Democracy Works. I'm going to donate this to your chairperson. Last year he gave me a lot of presents, so this year I decided to give him a present. In this book, we make a fantastic connection between economic growth, between those countries that are doing well on the African continent from an economic point of view, countries like Botswana, countries like Mauritius, and democracy. And there's a clear, discernible connection between opening up, citizen consent, and the ability of a country to move forward. That connection is amazing. Of course, you have another discourse. Rwanda is a good example. The country is actually doing well, but the political space is closed. President Kagame in the last election won the election by 97%. You have what the speaker was talking about, the Beijing model. China is doing extremely well. It has become the second largest economy, but the political space is closed in absolute terms. I submit and we submit in this book that there is no sustainable alternative to democracy. I've been to China twice. I went to China as Minister of Finance for reasons I will not disclose here. When I went for the first time in April 2010, I said I will never go back to this country. But my own opinion is that it is ironic and impossible that you can give economic freedom while it's denying people the right to choose. And the individual is predicated on the right to freedom of choice. That's why some of you drink Coca-Cola, some of you drink Fanta, some of you drink whiskey. Life is predicated on the right to freedom of choice. And if you emasculate the right to freedom of choice, it's only a question of time before there is an implosion. And so, to me, democracy is no sustainable alternative to it. So in the context of our country, there are certain things that we need to do. A few weeks ago, if you had asked me what is the biggest challenge facing your country, I would have said it's political legitimacy and contested elections. The contested election of 30th of July 2018 and contested elections before. Zimbabwe has had 34 elections since independence, and all of them have been contested. But contestation, you pay a price. The World Bank produced a report called Conflict. They produced a World Development Report. So the 2012 World Development Report was called Conflict. That report argued that for every 5 years that you spend in conflict, you lose 10 points of your GDP. So and if you consider that Zimbabwe has been in constant conflict with itself since 1980, some would argue since 1890. I would argue as a historian since 1450. Think of the GDP that we've lost over these years. It's massive. It's massive. And do you think that Africa is the least? Why you can find a connection between our status quo as the least developed continent with the number of conflicts we have had. We are the continent with the greatest number of political coups. We are the continent with the greatest number of civil wars. We are the conflict with the greatest number of implosions. We have countries that have no business to be called countries, with great respect to the Central African Republic, with great respect to Somalia, with great respect to the Democratic Republic of Congo. I was in Kinshasa the other day. The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has no business to be called the president of the DRC. He's the mayor of Greater Kinshasa, defined to include Lubumbashi. You know that there is no connection. There's by road between Kinshasa and Kisangani, the fourth largest city in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So you have a problem. So I suggest then that in the context of Zimbabwe, we need to find an answer to the issue of legitimacy. But as I was saying, a few weeks ago, I would have said the biggest issue affecting our country is the issue of legitimacy. But after the events of the last 3 weeks, I have to say that the biggest challenge now facing our country is the security of the person. We cannot be a country that is beating up its citizens, allegedly or not, raping up its women, shutting down the internet in these days and age. Who does that, for Christ's sake? Amnesty International produced a report, a fantastic report, and I urge every member to read it, called Open for Business but Closed for Human Rights. It's a shocking indictment on our human rights. It's just a summary of what happened in the last 3 weeks. I'm not proud to be a Zimbabwean when you read that kind of report. And everyone reads Amnesty International. Everyone reads The Economist. There was your business people, you would have read the editorial of the Financial Times that came out a few weeks ago, I think on the 28th or so of January 2019. Shocking indictment. And trust me, there's no investor who read that editorial of the Financial Times who will come and invest his money in Zimbabwe. It won't happen. Notwithstanding out the fine commodities we have in platinum, in chrome, in gold, capital is sensitive to the context in which it reproduces itself. So if the context is toxic, capital will flee because there are other competing zones where capital can reproduce itself. But I want to come to our proposed solutions. I agree with the speaker that there must be dialogue. But dialogue must be genuine. In our view, dialogue must be underwritten by the international community, by the regional community. In 2007, this country commenced dialogue. That dialogue was underwritten by the SADC after SADC had met in Dar es Salaam on the 29th of July, so on the 29th of March 2007, and appointed President Biti to act as an international facilitator. That is required as of now today. One of the key issues which we are facing is the issue of legitimacy. So the wrongdoer, the accused person, or the tortfeasor can't chaperone that dialogue. You can't be referee and player at the same time. You can't be, I follow cricket, you can't be a field or a batsman and an umpire at the same time. Gary, you play golf, you won't understand some of this. So let's have genuine dialogue called and facilitated internationally, guaranteed by international law in the form of SADC or the AU or the UN. What are those issues that we need to discuss? I think we should put everything on the table. We should put, number one, the crisis of legitimacy. Number two, we should put the reform agenda on the table, focusing primarily on 3 key things. Number one, Honorable Speaker, how do we guarantee the security of the person? How do we ensure that the right to human dignity codified in Section 50 of our Constitution is protected? How do we guarantee that the right to life codified in Section 48 of our Constitution is protected and upheld? How do we guarantee the right not to be subjected to torture, cruel, or degrading treatment codified in Section 53 of our Constitution is protected? And this is not politics. We are talking about the woman in Cholocho, Lotito, Chendambuya, who has been a victim in the past 38 years. Secondly, how do we deal with the issue of state capture? I've already alluded to that. Third, and most importantly, how do we deal with the issue of the demilitarization of our country? We love and respect our army. It plays a great role, but it must also respect the constitutional order of the country. And the constitutional order of the country is very clear in Section 206 of the Constitution. the military and state security agents are below and subordinate to parliament and the elected civilian authority. That has become the elephant in the living room. That has become the elephant in the living room. How can we get the military to respect the constitution of our country? It is not acceptable to see the military stopping us at traffic lights, being in supermarkets, being in gas stations. Something is abnormal. Something is abnormal. Let's get our country to function in the manner it has functioned in the last 38 years, where you only see soldiers when you drive past King George VI barrack, now known as Josiah Tongogara barrack. On the reform agenda, let's deal with electoral reform. Let's deal with legal reforms. Let's deal with the unfinished business of constitutional reform. We've got a decent constitution, but I would like to submit that there are aspects of it that we need to deal with. For instance, as a constitutional lawyer, I think that we gave too much power to the office of the executive president in chapter 5 of that constitution. No person is entitled to such power. Even if he doesn't want to abuse you, you'll abuse you because we gave him too much power. Also, as a lawyer, one of the things I would like to see amended is section 327 of our constitution. This allows, this says when a government accedes to an international statute, let's say the Rome Treaty, CEDAW, it then has to come to parliament for ratification. Let's follow the Francophone model, where if the government commits itself to an international instrument, it must immediately be codified as part of domestic law. Let's deal with the issue of media reform. I was here in this very same room last year, on or around the 5th of March 2018, when you had a similar meeting in this very room, when Kenya's Mafukidze, I can't see him, asked Mr. Mnangagwa why he had not liberalized the airwaves. And his answer was, I will do it after the election. 7 months after the election, we are still one of the few countries in the world that has got one broadcasting house, the ZBC. I don't know how many of you watch it. And it doesn't cost a cent to liberalize the airwaves. It doesn't cost a cent to simply say, anyone who wants to broadcast, come and do it. So we need to deal with media reform. Next is the economy. The economy is key, ladies and gentlemen. We have to understand the fundamental problems arresting our country. First is the manner in which the economy is governed. The mismanagement of the economy reflected by the budget deficit that is now 15% of GDP. It's not good enough. We have to eliminate deficit financing. We have to live within our means, or as I used to say when I was in government, we eat what we kill. You can't kill a rabbit and call the whole village and eat as if you have killed an elephant. And I always say in African economics, 1 minus 2, it can't. Once you say 1 minus 2 is equal to minus 1, you've got a problem. So let's eliminate deficit financing. It's unacceptable that we can have treasury bills issued of $7 billion or 35% of GDP. It's unacceptable that we run an overdraft with the central bank. As you know, I'm just a poor lawyer, but I don't know anywhere in the world that a government can run an overdraft with its central bank, a central bank that is broke. Remember, it doesn't have money. We've never capitalized it. But you run an overdraft facility that is $3 billion, $4 billion. As chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, I was shocked that since 2014, and we're going to present a report, Mr. Speaker, allow me to anticipate our report. You know, when the budget is approved, the Accountant General must issue a warrant to a ministry. This is the authorization that you, the Minister of Transport, I see my Mkwasha Advocate Chasi here, you are entitled to 4 million. So the Accountant General writes to the Permanent Secretary, the accounting officer of that ministry, to say you can spend 4 million. So that warrant is the authority. And if the Permanent Secretary of the other ministry exceeds expenditure, you can hold him to account because you've given him a warrant. Since 2014, we've not issued a warrant. Since 2014, we've been running a budget deficit, but there's never been a supplementary budget, there's never been a bill of condonation. So Parliament is worthless. The disrespect I was talking about. We pretend to budget in November or December, but the government will go and spend double the money without any respect to Parliament and to the protection and integrity of the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So we need fiscal consolidation, ladies and gentlemen. If it means we have to amend the Public Finance Management Act to enforce us living within our means, let's do that. Number two, we have to deal with the mess in the financial services sector. We have to deal with the mess in the monetary sector. Number one, we must demonetize the bond note as a matter of agents. To me, it's trite, it's common sense. Number two, let's ring-fence the stock of balances, RTGS balances that are in people's account. I don't think this economy can afford another vicious loss such as the one we experienced in 2007, 2008, where if you read the Justice George Smith's Commission of Inquiry on pension funds, we lost $5.68 billion worth of pension monies. The current balances in banks right now in the broad money supply is between $10 billion and $11 billion. I suspect that if we do a proper audit, because some of these monies have been banned, if we do a proper audit, the real balances in our account should be around $6 billion. It should be possible for a government to actually monetize those balances. The small amounts, most of you are like me, we've got small balances in our books. You must believe me. But there are big actors like Delta, Old Mutual, IMSCO Group, Econet. We have big monies, probably $4 billion, probably $5 billion. Those are the ones that we need to negotiate and see whether we can convert that into paper or we just discount it. But a solution is possible. But we have to monetize the ring-fenced balances because this economy can't suffer another uncompensated hemorrhage such as the one which we saw in 2008. Third is the issue of currency. When we abandoned the Zimbabwean dollar in 2008, it was not the genius of any government minister. It was the market. The ordinary woman, the ordinary mother in Chendambuya, in Lotito, abandoned the Zimbabwean dollar. I remember going to Nyamaropa in 2007 and I wanted to buy a packet of potatoes. Those poor old women said to me, give us 100 rands or $10 for a packet of potato. So it was the market. Now I want to tell you something. Once the market has rejected its own currency, it's not possible to dollarize because it's a confidence issue. The Zimbabwean dollar was caught in flagranto, was caught with its pence down. It is not possible to introduce it. There is no country in the world that has involuntarily dollarized, that has been able to dollarize again. Because it's no longer about economics, it's about confidence. If you catch your husband in a compromised situation, trust is gone and irretrievably gone. We caught the Zimbabwean dollar in flagranto, trust is gone and trust will never be solved. But what do we do? What do we do? In the short term, in my opinion, let's strengthen the regime of multiple currencies. In the short term, let's strengthen the regime of multiple currencies. In the long term, the US dollar is unsustainable because it's overvalued. In the past 2 years alone, it has appreciated in value by 19%. So we can't use it because it makes our exports so uncompetitive. It also makes our cost structure so uncompetitive. So we need to devalue the US dollar, but we can't do it because we're not the Federal Reserve. We can't devalue that which we don't print. So I suggest, with great respect, Honorable Speaker, let's adopt that currency which has international credibility, but which allows us to in fact devalue, and that currency is the rand. And the rand makes sense for another reason. We will have to lose our monetary independence. I'm not a nationalist, so that doesn't bother me. But the other thing which we'll do in that process, we will in fact abolish our central bank. And I won't lose tears over it, because the central bank has been at the epicenter of economic disequilibrium in this country in the past 5 years or more. If you look at all your problems, the central bank is there. Bond note is there. Overdraft is there. Inflation is there. Third, the advantage of also joining the Rand Monetary Union is that following the failure of countries like Greece, Italy, to some extent Portugal and Spain in the European Union, we now know that it's not enough to have a monetary union convergence without also a fiscal convergence. So membership of the Rand Monetary Union, the South Africans, as they are in fact doing right now, will insist on fiscal convergence and fiscal discipline. So they will ask us, what is the level of your debt to GDP? What is the net present value of your exports to GDP? Those fundamentals. In other words, what is your health? What is your growth rate? What is your inflation? So membership of the Rand Monetary Union will enforce on a very ill-disciplined Zimbabwe both monetary and fiscal diligence and discipline. But if this issue is such a problematic for our country, I don't think that the government and a few individuals should sit and impose a currency that we don't want. If the West comes to the West, Honorable Speaker, let's be democratic. Let's have a referendum on the subject. With three questions. Do we keep the bond note? Do we introduce the Zim dollar? Do we keep the regime of multiple currencies? Or do we join the Rand Monetary Union? The market will tell you. What I can tell you will lose is the Zimbabwean dollar. It will lose. What I can tell you, Honorable Speaker, will lose is the bond note. It will lose. I'm winding up. It will lose. What I'm not sure will win is between the retention of the multiple currency system and joining the Rand Monetary Union. I think it's 50-50. Yeah. That I don't know. I think it's 50-50 because there's merits and demerits. But the first two, 6-0. I have no doubt about it. Next, on economic reform, we need to deal with the infrastructure of corruption in this country. We are now ranked one of the lowest countries on the Transparency International Corruption Index. There are only two countries that are doing better, if you can call West corruption is better than Zimbabwe, and that's South Africa and Nigeria. There are 4 commanding heights of corruption that we must deal with in this country. The first one is the US dollar, the foreign exchange. You can't have an elite going to the Reserve Bank to borrow $40 million and then repay it using bond notes. So that infrastructure, that commanding height of corruption must go. The second commanding height of corruption is fuel. There's arbitrage in fuel. Why are we buying all our fuel from Singapore to a company called Trafigura when Singapore is not an oil-producing company? Why are we not buying it from Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing countries, including Venezuela? And why on the 12th of January 2019 did we increase the bond note price of fuel when all we needed to do was to liberalize the price of fuel, to dollarize the price of fuel, because that would have resolved the shortage, because fuel is bought in US dollars. So as a result of what we did, the fuel queues are still there. There's no fuel because we did not address the fundamental thing, which is the shortage of fuel. And on 12th of January, all we needed to do is to say, please sell your fuel in US dollars. And anyone who wants a license, come. If you want to take fuel from Brazil, from China, from Kuwait, you've got a license. And within days, not weeks, within days, we'll have sorted out the queues and the price will come down. I'm astounded by the fact that our fuel is one of the most expensive in the world. Yet in the past 6 months, the price of crude has tumbled from $80 to $45 a barrel. That arbitrage now between $85 and the $3 we're buying it is going into someone's private pocket. So we need to decimate this commanding height of corruption. The third commanding height of corruption is command agriculture. That speaks for itself. We've spent $4 billion in the last 3 years on command agriculture, but we have nothing to show for it. We're still buying maize from Zambia and Malawi from former Zimbabwean farmers, ironically. The fourth commanding height is, of course, minerals. When I was finance minister, I used to sound like a broken record in respect of our diamonds. Now there is gold, now there is platinum, now there is a chrome. It's not good enough. We have to shut those commanding heights as a precondition of this economy moving forward. The other things are developmental. We need infrastructure, we need technology. Fourth thing which we need to deal with is something that I started with, the agenda of nation building. We have a country, but we don't have a nation. The levels of hatred existing among us, which we now see being played and replayed on social media. I think the levels of toxicity in this country are equivalent to Rwanda in January of 1994. And I mentioned January because in April of 94, Rwanda had a genocide where 800,000 people were killed. And it's not just our disaffection, at least for the constituents I speak of. It's not that the disaffection between us and the government. It's also the disaffection between citizen and citizen. The divorce rate has shot up. When I started practicing law, you'll know what. My unopposed divorces were just a small number on the opposed row on Wednesday in the High Court. Now, there are 37 to 50 on every Thursday. So I know of lawyer colleagues whose only job is to do divorces. That's Zimbabwe. So with great respect, we have become the divorce capital of Southern Africa. And if you know in Harare, if you know the stable, that building close to Munumtaba, that white building, every day they are dealing with the divorces in inverted commas because 70% of our marriages are unregistered customary law unions. So they don't go to the divorce, and you will tell that this is a divorce when you see a name like Due versus Due, Paradza versus Paradza. You must know it's a matrimonial issue. And those of you who want to write a book, just go into that court and listen. So there's a broken down social contract. We need to fix the social fabric of our country. We need to see the moral recalibration of our country. We need an agenda of national healing. We need an agenda of transitional justice. So many of us have got compartments of pains. So we suffer either business loss, family loss, political pain, torture, etc. So we've been compartmentalizing this pain in little corners of our heart. The UN, WHO some 4 years ago said 60% of Zimbabweans suffer from bipolar. And people said, oh no, it's crazy, but you have to, because you are in a country every day of your life. You go home, there's no electricity. You hit a pothole. Then you have to stand in a queue of fuel for hours before you hit the hard politics now, tear gas, and some of us will talk too much. So it's just too much for everyone. Finally, what we have to put on the agenda is, of course, the agenda of reintegration. We cannot have a country that is isolated, but we create the conditions of people's isolation. The current dispensation had so much goodwill from November 2017, but we just squandered it. When I saw Harriet Baldwin, the Secretary for Development of the United Kingdom, saying the strong words she said last week, I knew it was over. So we have to embark on a program of reintegration. And let's not be ideological about it. It doesn't matter the West, the East, the North, the South. Zimbabwe just needs to move forward. And we are such a tiny little country, we must make friends with everyone. As Deng Xiaoping said, it doesn't matter the color of the cat as long as it catches mice. We are not catching mice. So I submit that that should be on the agenda of, and I have no doubt, Comrade Shingi, that when we wrote our economic blueprint, we calculated that this economy can actually grow at the rate of 10% per annum. And that by 2028, we could actually achieve $100 billion economy. It's possible, but that vision, that dream is not possible before we deal with the elephant in the living room, which is our ugly, predatory, rogue politics. I thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Honorable Tendai Biti, sometimes you just don't know where to govern this, but I think that it was worth us to allow some of this to make sure that he discharges what was on his heart. As much as I allowed his speaker to also discharge what is on his heart. And now I would like to call upon my brother. I'm trying to reserve comments for the two discharges because we would like to receive comments from. But I'd like to call upon my brother, J.M. Busha, who is the CEO of J.M. Busha Investment Group. He will be talking on leading in diversity in difficult times. For him to come up here, a round of applause as he comes. As he comes, Chairman, I am going to assume some very sweeping powers over this meeting. And those are to manage our time, but at the same time to try and get some value out of this, what we call the big debate. So I'm going to just use my own creativity and the powers that you've bestowed upon me. So I will try and tie things together properly. So I'll allow the next speaker, my brother. The others are politicians, and I know you are one too, but would you promise me one thing?
Yes, Papa.
Yes, Papa, yes. Let's agree, how many minutes are you going to speak?
Between 10 and 15. 5.
Okay, all right, 10, 15, now 5. All right, let's see how you go. But I would like this gathering here to interact and interrogate some of the contributions that you would have put. So please go ahead, thanks.
Honorable Speaker, Tendai Biti, distinguished guests, and, the ambassador from Nigeria, the chairperson, chairman of the CEO Africa Roundtable, Mr. Bina, the CEO, Mr. Gundani. Good afternoon. So last time I met Dr. Shingi, we were debating whether to call him Papa, is the fondly called within the ministries. So if they're not prophets, they are Papa, and their wives are Mama. So thank you, Papa, for giving me the opportunity. So I'm going to really talk about leadership here. This is really about leadership in diversity and difficult times. And all of us would know that globally, we are in difficult times. And I think if I follow Honorable Biti, in Zimbabwe, we are in difficult times. So I'm going to talk about VUCA. And I'm sure you all have heard of this acronym, VUCA, which originated from the US military when they were describing conditions in Afghanistan and Iraq during those invasions. So the V stands for volatile, uncertainty, complex, and ambiguous. And I've just changed that to say we are in a very uncertain conditions ahead in Zimbabwe. We are aware that we have very uncertain conditions ahead of us in Zimbabwe. Now, if we were to coin as business people to say, we are in the VUCA environment, it does not take a rocket scientist to understand that. And I'm going to ask ourselves, my fellow executives, so how do you, as an executive, as a CEO, lead and deal with changing economic, trading, political environment? And I know in your analysis you can have, pastel and all the different forms of models you use to be able to analyze so that your business can survive and your business can grow. This is what sees you as a CEO, as an executive. How do you survive when there are trade wars? How do you survive when you don't know where the bond note would be trading tomorrow versus the actual currency, the real currency, which is the US dollar? So you'll be able to see that there is liquidity crisis. More bond notes. I spoke here in 2017 or 2016 when they said they're going to inject 200 million bond notes to deal with the liquidity in Zimbabwe. Only 200 million bond notes. And it's now more than a year. We still have bond notes we can't find in a bank, but we find them in the streets of Harare. So more bond notes, less US dollars, malt currency, new currency. Adopt the rands, and we're not quite sure whether joining the CMA countries is the big issue. Lots of big headlines about big deals, but still no jobs. New leadership, but still no new path. Still no new strategy to be able to deal with what Zimbabwe is facing. Still the same as before November 2017, as in 2008. If you left Zimbabwe in 2008, you see the queues on the banks. You come back in 2018 and 2019, you still see the same queues. So the same. Hyperinflation, still tough business conditions for many Zimbabweans. Still shedding jobs. Uncertainty is there. You cannot predict if you are in the business of exporting and importing. How do you do your scenarios? What currency do you use? What term structure of interest rates do you use? And who is going to pay you? You still cannot pay your staff, and the staff cannot pay school fees and other stuff. Still, you need to survive as a business. Because business must be able to put models to be able to survive in the long term. But within the VUCA environment, you need to be able to say, how do you go forward? How do you grow your profits? How do you deal with the trade wars between China and the US? And how do you deal with President Trump, who can arrest the CEO of Huawei purely because you traded with Iran? How do you deal with the global issues? How do you compete as a Zimbabwean business where you want to be able to scale so you can compete with other business globally? And how does Zimbabwe as a country improve on the global economic index? There's still no Brexit deal in the UK. And that's the result of immigration issues. That's the result of advanced world saying no to African immigrants to their countries. That's why today they can choose and decide who takes who, and some perish in the Mediterranean seas. Still in Africa, we still talk about hope. Still we talk about our great resources. Still we pride and we say we are the richest continent, yet our people do not have options. It's time for us to wake up really and stop talking about potential, and let's talk about reality, where we are. So if you look at the picture there, 1997, 1998, that was the Asian crisis, that started in Russia. I was a trader on the JC those years. 2001 to 2003, the Iraq War. 2007, 2008, the financial crisis. Zimbabwe was going already in its financial crisis. Hyperinflation, everybody was a trillionaire. 2017, 2018, trade wars. And that's a circle. We are trapped in a cyclical trap where we can't get out of our problems. We need, as Zimbabweans, to be, and Africans, to be innovative. We need to make sure that the leaders we choose, the people who run our companies, are men and women of integrity. The people who run our governments, local, national, are men and women of integrity. they must have a vision. They must be able to enroll the best men and women and be able to engage them so that we can move forward. That's what leaders do. The previous speakers kept on talking about vision and leadership, and I concur. But what kind of leadership? We need leaders that can own a vision. Out of the vision, you can build a strategy and a mission to be able to execute so that you realize what you envision. A vision is what you want to see. If you say you want to see Zimbabwe prosper and being a middle income, then you need to be able to say the strategy is mapped to achieve that. Those who do not have an MBA today, you're going to get an MBA because I'm going to go into case studies. Those who have one, you're going to get an extra. So I've got part one of my presentation. These are 2 case studies. I'm going to use 2 mining disasters, one that turns into a tragedy, and one was a joy. The 2 case studies I'm going to talk about are 2 mining disasters. One was in Chile, or Chile, where 33 miners in 2010 were trapped about 800 meters down in the ground. And the second example I'm going to use is in South Africa, where miners, 3,000 miners, camped on a copy in Marikana, demanding for a better wage. And what you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, fellow executives, how the 2 CEOs of those countries, the 2 presidents, reacted to those 2. And this is a live case, where we are able to see leadership, vision, and being able to find solutions as it happens. So, San Jose copper mine in Chile, the president was President Pinera, and in South Africa, the president was President Jacob Zuma. Both leaders were elected in 2010. Well, actually, in 2010 was the president of Chile. President Zuma was elected just a year earlier. What is further tragic for Chile is that prior to that, there was an earthquake before the new president took over. In August, as fat as it, 33 miners were trapped 700 meters down, almost 1 kilometer, you can imagine. And on August 9, 2012, 3,000 miners were on strike for higher wages. The results are very different. The president of Chile took charge, and he had one direction: bring those miners back on the ground, dead or alive. That was clear, unequivocal clear. If they come alive, they were going to celebrate. If they were dead, they would have the decency to bury their people, and families would get closure. That was clear leadership and very clear directive. Bring them alive or dead on the ground. That's what he said, and he was on the ground. President Zuma, his directive, he sent 400 heavy armed policemen to Marikana, and we all know what happened. Now, facing those very difficult, situations that you can imagine, these were very volatile, very dangerous situations. It was a matter of life and death. So the leaders needed to make a decision. They need to have a vision. They need to say, what is it I want to see? They needed to have scenarios. The Chilean president said, either they're going to come alive or dead, and I'm not quite sure what President Zuma had in mind. You always need a leader, and this is where diversity comes in. Who do you put on your team? Which name do you put first when the tough gets going, or the going gets tough? Who do you put first on the leader? He did, the Chilean leader did not choose anybody on the mind. He wanted to choose a different person by the name Sogaret. And that gentleman picked 32 other people. And among them, ladies and gentlemen, there was a psychologist. Why do you need a psychologist who is not a geologist, mine engineer, or whatever? But he understood. Families would be anxious. Journalists, people will be everywhere. It will be chaos. He needs somebody who understands people and be able to cool people down. That's the reason why he did. And the main characteristic, he was chosen, that gentleman, because he was composed. He works under pressure, remain calm. And if I go to the mission leader in SA, it was armed police. And the characteristics of that was really, it was a confrontational mood between the miners and the police. As I described earlier on, the scene was obviously chaotic, anxious people waiting there. And lots of countries were involved in Chile, including some young South Africans who volunteered to go there. Now, there was a call to action. How many of us in Zimbabwe are going to volunteer to fix Zimbabwe? But when we volunteer, those with the powers, are they going to listen to us? Would they accept diverse views and different people to be able to take part in the reconstruction of Zimbabwe? They did in Chile because they had a vision, they had a mission to accomplish. Okay. Many countries were involved, and the strategy for Chile was clear. In South Africa, what happened is that on 16 August 2012, 34 miners were shot dead, many wounded, because there was no clear vision and directive. In Chile, 69 days afterwards, all the miners were rescued. So the situations were the same. So what was the difference in solving the problems? Was it the approach? Was it the strategy? My belief is that it was strategic thinking and progressive leadership. Leading in difficult times, ladies and gentlemen, with this time sensitivity, where it's a matter of life and death, you need leaders with a vision. Leaders that can craft a strategy to make sure that that vision is realized. It's not a pipe dream. It's something that is tangible. So the president was on the ground. He gave live updates just as good as the mission leader. The government took control. On August 1 last year in Zimbabwe, the government was not in control. So people died in Zimbabwe. In SA, the president flew to Maputo for a SADC meeting. Rather than to be in Marikana, he chose actually to go to Mozambique. And the result is that other political parties in South Africa took advantage for that. Malema went there, it became a no-go area for the ANC government. In Chile, the government engaged everybody who had an idea. They embraced the international community, as Honorable Tendai Biti said. For us to be able to move forward, we need to make sure that we've got friends. So leaders must have a vision. They must be able to enroll the best men and women, the best minds, and you must engage continuously. If you want to run your company and be successful, if you want to scale your business, make sure that you have a well-crafted vision and enroll the best brains in that country and make sure you keep them engaged. Then your business can scale. Then your business will be sustainable. Just like in Chile, it was mission accomplished. Everybody was alive. Now, I did talk about really this being a case study. There's no case study without an exercise, right? Please, can you I humbly ask you to do this exercise. Take a piece of paper which will be collected at the end. And I want you to answer this question as honestly as possible. So imagine You are under some VUCA environment, whether now as the CEO, because you are in Zimbabwe, there's no currency, things are tough, there's no fuel, you want to go to a meeting, but you have to be in a queue for 4 hours. That's the environment you are operating in. If there was a main, one word that would describe you, the mission leader in Chile was basically Wex. He was a calm guy. He was chosen. He was also an engineer. There are lots of other engineers. But they say, you know what? He is composed under pressure. Now, you as the CEO executive, what is that one word? Please write, what is that one word you think your colleagues would describe you, that if there's a big meeting, there's a debate, they will say, no, this guy must be the chairman, he must lead us. Why did Mr. Honorable Bina chosen to be the chairman? Why do you think you were the chairman of the CEO Roundtable? And the second question is, our former president, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, what one word would you use to describe him? That stands out. Then Mr. Julius Nyerere, the late president of Tanzania. Just write those words. Don't write your name. We won't mention, who you are. You are here representing your business. Why do you think that business sent you? What is that attribute that makes you so different? Then the last person is the late Nelson Mandela. What do you think the word describes him? What do you think that's the word? Why do you think he did for South Africa? Why do you think they chose him to be the president? Why do you think the collective of the ANC, that did many great leaders, Oliver Tambo, Luthuli, Sisulu, there are lots of massive leaders that could have been present in South Africa. But they chose him. Why do you think they chose Ms. Mandela as a president? But most importantly, write down the word that best describes you. Are you composed? Are you that leader who can take your company, who can scale your company to be a global giant? Thank you.
Now we have a crisis of time. But thank you so much, Mr. Busha. Thank you so much for that contribution and that execution you gave. We are left with maybe 15 minutes at the most. We have already run out of time. I would like to take, initially I'd like to take some questions and then some interactions, maybe just 3 or so questions for now, which can be fielded to any of these 3, and then we take it from there. Do we have a roving microphone? Right, there is a hand up there, so please excuse me because I'm facing the lights here. There's a hand up there. Is there another hand? I just need to see 3 hands first, and then I'll give it to a hand there, and then another hand there. So 1, 2, 3. Please go, sir. It would be nice to introduce yourself, and then we take it from there. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Kululeko Spanda. I'm a correspondent for the Zimbabwe Independent newspaper. The question is directed to Honorable Tendai Biti. You have spoken to the need for dialogue in Zimbabwe, which is probably begged by the international community. Most people believe that the SADC region should be taking the lead in facilitating that dialogue. But we have a SADC region which is seen as leaning to one of the players that are supposed to be in that dialogue. Where does that leave SADC with regards to the Zimbabwean question? Is it going to be able to help lead a process that will take Zimbabwe out of its current problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Kululeko. And then, yes, there was a hand up there. Is that Mr. Nyemba? Yes. And then we'll come here. We'll just take the questions first, and then we will get the panelists to respond.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're loud and clear. Just speak.
Thank you. This question is, William Nyemba is my name, member of the CEO Roundtable. This question is directed to Mr. Speaker. We were quite pleased to hear you encouraging us as CEOs to add our voice to the dialogue. We're also glad that you highlighted the dialogue issue as one of the issues that needs to be addressed to try and sort out the mess in the country. I just wonder if, Mr. Speaker, in your office, and you deal with these politicians every day, and I think it's so clear that the dialogue is amongst the politicians mainly. In your office, Mr. Speaker, is there any way you could perhaps crack a whip and bring these politicians to the table and ask them to do something? Seeing that they're all in the parliament there, I mean, is there any way? Yes, we can do something as CEOs, but surely, you wine and dine with them every day. Can you not bring them on the table and get them to do something? Thank you.
Thank you. And then we had a hand over here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Godfrey. I work for the company known as Chairperson. My question goes to my brother, Mr. Busha. My question goes like this. We are CEOs of companies, and we're in a toxic environment, as already been described. Our situation is unique. We heard about Chile, we heard about South Africa. They chose options. What is our option in this environment of ours? What are our choices? We have already chosen leaders. This is where we are. What are the options really? Government has put its options on the table. And those options appears to be different from what Mr. Biti has said. And this is our environment. What are the options? Leaders were chosen. How do we navigate this environment? That is my question.
Thank you. We will start in the order that the questions have been asked. Honorable Biti, there is a whole dialogue question there on the role of SADC, its perception on it being biased or it's not impartial, and what is the way forward. Please, can you use that microphone, Honorable Biti? Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Munyeza. I think that a lot of things are happening behind the doors that I can assure you within SADC. And I think that don't be misled by prima facie appearances of condonation. I am aware of some of the things that are happening. But you must also remember that SADC leaders in SADC countries have been bearing the weight of Zimbabwe's failure. There are 3 million Zimbabweans in South Africa, as I'm talking to you. So to a large extent, South Africa has in fact been subsidizing the Zimbabwean crisis. Can you imagine how many Zimbabwean women are giving birth at the Baragwanath hospital in Soweto? It's such a huge number. There's a strain there. So I think that out of their own selfish interest, they will move in on Zimbabwe because the Zimbabwean crisis is putting a premium on their country. South Africa has been tottering on a growth rate of 1%, 1.5%, basically in the last 5 years. I suspect that the resolution and the emergence of a strong Zimbabwe could increase South Africa's GDP to 2%, 3%. The second thing that worries the SADC leaders, they cannot verbalize this, is the military coup of November 2017. That coup was seamless, and I can assure you that every general in the region would have been studying how it happened here in Zimbabwe. And the political leaders are aware that their generals are studying how the Zimbabwean boys did it. So Zimbabwe has got these portals of discomfort that will make the region act, even if they don't want. So I'm not worried by the slowness. That was the same position in 2007. We pushed and pushed and pushed. President Mbeki could not move. But once the images of a butchered Morgan Tsvangirai emerged from Machipisa on the 11th of March 2007, SADC moved very quickly and convened that meeting in Dar es Salaam on the 29th of March 2007.
Thank you very much. In that same order, Honorable Speaker, they are asking, you must crack the whip. You meet with these people now that Parliament is opened. Why don't you crack the whip and bring them to order?
Thank you. The questioner has not described clearly which politicians is he talking about. Because there are politicians within Parliament, and there are politicians through their respective parties who sponsored the politicians in Parliament. So sponsored politicians in Parliament and the sponsoring politicians outside Parliament. And I believe you cannot separate the two. What the sponsored members of Parliament do in Parliament, they sometimes don't have an independent thought. They are whipped to toe party line. They are whipped during their caucuses. And I believe some of them that may not agree with the party line. And if they are so vociferous to the extent that they are openly disagreeing, the sponsoring party will invoke Section 129 of the Constitution and call them back. And then they've lost their seat in Parliament. These are the dynamics. These are the dynamics. They are not free agents, and I am sure some of them suffer crisis of conscience. And when they are recalled, they will try to fight in the courts. And my Tezwara here knows he fought. He fought. But then the court says, political parties are basically private organizations. They've got their rules. And yet we are the ones who passed that constitution that allowed Section 129 of the Constitution to be applicable. You see the dichotomy. It's not easy.
So what would you recommend?
I would recommend, first and foremost, one, the level of politician that comes to Parliament. There are few Bitis who can articulate issues as he did this afternoon. There are few. Agreed? I was going to be surprised if you didn't clap your hands. The Constitution, which we adopted after a referendum during the GNU, yeah, especially the major parties, we came out with that Constitution and endorsed Section 129 of the Constitution. Now, the Constitution also says to be a member of Parliament, you must be 21 years and older, registered voter, citizen of Zimbabwe. Only 3 qualifications. That's all. Intellectual and professional capacity is not an issue. Now, that's what you give me.
All right, Honorable Speaker, I know. I want to put you to a point where you must then tell us you've got this material that you've got.
Yes.
Yeah, the Constitution has given you that. The people of Zimbabwe has given you that. We have a toxic political environment. We need to dialogue. We need to move forward as a nation. And you are one of the 3 arms of the state, and you are sitting at the helm of it. So I don't think we are going to allow you to excuse yourself from proffering a solution.
That's very good. That's very good. Solution number 1, which we have practically done, is that in a microcosm manner, our parliamentary committees involve all members of parliament from different political persuasions. And when they are in that committee, we have said they must come up with consensus. And invariably, they've come up with consensus reports. But that is not enough. That is not enough. Parliament, for example, could be interrogating these various issues that I raised and what Honorable Biti raised and what Mr. Busha raised. If you don't have a quality parliament in terms of the personnel, for example, you talk of a budget deficit. Budget deficit, with all due respect, economic literacy in my parliament is low. It's very low. It's very low. And let me tell you one thing. I produced an economic literacy booklet, simplified version, together with Zimbabwe Minister of Finance. We produced that in 2014 because we realized there was a problem. Tell you what, came out, put in each pigeonhole of each member of parliament in the 8th parliament. We had a seminar. Then we started. And one of the early modules talks about what is a budget. And then I asked that question, what's the budget? Huh? No answer.
Was Honorable Biti there?
No, he was not there. He could have done much better. But there was no answer. What I said to the facilitators who were going to assist us, in all humility, can we postpone this seminar? And we postponed it.
So, Speaker, I'm going to just wind up. I can see where you're taking this to.
Yes.
Here is where you are being diplomatic, you are being very kind, you are also being candid at the same time of the situation you have. So what you have told us is that for us to push you back and say, can you cause a conversation amongst parliamentarians? The first point you've said is that, first and foremost, they do not have a mind of their own because they are whipped.
Correct.
Secondly, what you're telling us is that over the years, dross has come to the surface. It's not cream. And therefore, am I correct? You are saying correct, yes. So we don't have the raw material for a very, what Honorable Biti put here as a dialogue process.
Yes.
We don't have the ingredients from your area. But I would like to reflect this. Honorable Biti, you then said, and I want you to give him the mic. Honorable Biti said that Parliament, let me go back. Parliament, because I want this dialogue. You say Parliament is just, you used the word, that Parliament's role is minimized. How do you think we can bridge this gap? Because that is where part of our democracy, our governance, the whole aspect of the capacity to move this nation forward. If what you are saying is an indictment of how you see Parliament, you're the Speaker of Parliament. And Honorable Biti, can you reflect on this? I'll come back to you, Speaker. But I'd like Honorable Biti to just take on this. Just a reflection on Parliament.
You want to rule me out of order?
No, I'm not. I'm not, but I want you back.
Yeah.
But I want him to comment because it must tie up from his cry was, we have a parliament that is not significant to the power plays and the politics of this country. And then you come back.
Right.
I want you to come back, Speaker.
I'll give
I know you're not used to be saying, Mr. Speaker say, it's people are appealing to you. Now you've got a new speaker today.
Well, thank you. I think that there is my point was that Parliament is disrespected, and that Parliament is considered the weakest of the three chambers of power, the executive and the legislature. If you read the reports of the parliamentary committees, I think they're doing fantastic work. We have Honorable Mona in the Budget and Finance Committee. If you go and read his committee's report on the 2019 budget, it's the kind of things that all of you were saying. One of the questions he asked, or his committee asked was, you've presented with the budget, but what is the currency of this budget? And without knowing the currency of this budget, this debate is pointless. So it's the things that you business people are asking. But the problem, no one listens to those things. As I said, I chair the Public Accounts Committee. The things we are discussing now, that Minister of Finance, you're not producing audited statements, you're not complying with Section 35 of the Public Finance Management Act, you're not bringing a schedule of days to Parliament, you're not bringing supplementary budgets. Previous committees have brought them, but the executive doesn't listen to Parliament. And I think that Parliament needs to find teeth to bring penalties to an erratic executive that has no respect for it. Every Wednesday, there's a question and answer. Few ministers turn up. The Minister of Health, to be fair to him. The Minister of Labour, to be fair to him, but nobody asks questions. But the ministers that matter, they don't turn up. But if you go on the order paper sheet, you'll find questions we asked last year when Parliament was sworn in. They've not been answered, written questions, because the ministers don't come in. So I think that, with great respect to what the Speaker said on the membership, there's a lot of energy in that Parliament, but the executive is not respecting.
So you're not done. So you are saying, Honourable Biti, you are not. Now, here is where the contradiction could be. How is it that when we are now trying to vote for certain things in Parliament, that energy you're talking about, where do things break down? Because at committee level, what he said rightfully here, he said that there is always buy-in, there is always consensus. Where does it fall down when we are now saying we've agreed that this is supposed to go this way? Is it the whipping into line from the political parties and the outsiders who are not in Parliament? Where is it breaking down?
The whipping system is corrosive. If you go into the committees, in 90% of them, you won't tell which member is from which political party. You won't tell. There's consensus. People want to know the truth. In my own committee, we were discussing the failure of Parliament, so the failure of the executive to pass public supplementary budgets. And Honorable Raidza was like a lion, but you don't know where Honorable Raidza, which political party he comes from. I can tell you he comes from Berengwa, but I can't tell you his political party. It's when we go to the chamber now, that's where the whipping system works. That's why if you read this, I refer to Honorable Mona's report, because it's coming from the committee system. The executive is not yet aware of what's happening. So the chamber is where there's a problem. Sometimes you actually have a member from another party saying, please, Honorable Biti, can you ask this question for me? Because if I ask it, I'll be recalled. And that's where the problem.
Thank you, Honorable Biti. Now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a problem. The problem is not that Parliament is not producing all the necessary information, the necessary documents, the necessary positions where this nation needs to go, even in a dialogue session. So the issue of the capacity of parliamentarians in their personal capacity, there seems to be a trade-off of their skills, their gifts, their whatever, to bring this country to it. They are now saying, what Honorable Biti is saying, the problem is now, perhaps, Mr. Speaker, your dialogue push is not to parliamentarians. Your dialogue push is to the executive. What sayeth you?
That's a professorial question. The dialogue, first and foremost, must be to Parliament. What we have done, what we did around December, before we went for recess. Before I say what I'm going to say about that December, I had audience with the former president to say the executive is not responding to parliamentary business. In terms of section 107, subsection 2 of the Constitution.
This is in 2017?
2015.
2015, okay.
2015. And then the matter was discussed, I'm told, in the House. And some members of the executive, through my intelligence, began to say The Honorable Speaker wants to treat us as if he's the headmaster of a school. Yeah? Mm-hmm. But fortunately, the former president was on my side and said, you must respond. Then we began to see some trickle. Come January 2016, after we'd received the trickle from, in response to the reports, then I wrote to individual ministers and I gave them 1 month to respond. Some ministries were outstanding as much as 6 reports, no responses. But I gave them 1 month. And I said, if you don't respond within a month, then Parliament will charge you with contempt of Parliament. There was a resurrection. We got some responses, very good responses. So, in terms of content, in what they replied, very good. But it is a question of the sense of agency. That happened, we were happy, 2016, 2017, there was now a lull again.
2018, 2019?
No, 2017.
No, I'm just fast forwarding.
Yeah, 2017. Don't fast forward, the record will break. And then 2017, there was a lull, went back to the president. Then there was another resurrection that actually we were pleasantly surprised with. But I think this must not be a culture in which Parliament must beg for responses. Because as Honorable Biti has indicated, and I alluded to it as well, the question of constitutionalism. If you are an executive that respects the Constitution, in this particular case, Section 107, subsection 2 of the Constitution, you don't need to have the Speaker meeting the head of state to remind. You don't need the Speaker to write to individual ministries.
Being a non-lawyer, what then should we do on Section 107? What is the, because they are part of the executive, what should be done to those ministers? Because these men and women here are suffering from lack of traction, lack of execution.
Yeah, let's start where the beginning must be. I consider these members very powerful agents of influence. The problem with our leaders in commerce and industry is this: they divorce themselves from the political mainstream.
How so?
They don't participate.
How should they?
They must join the political parties.
Yes.
They must join political parties and canvass for better elected representatives.
But capital is shy, and capital is timid, and so that is what they work with.
Patriotism should not be timid, because that's the first tenet. If you are patriotic Zimbabwean, influence the political change in terms of coming up with people who will represent business interests in Parliament. And obviously, you'll be forced to choose people of substance that will make a difference in Parliament. Further than that, they can influence the electorate, whereby we have a motion, like what the Zambians did, to change the constitution and say to be a member of Parliament or a president, minimum qualifications is O-levels, credits. And they changed their constitution. Now, their crop of members of parliament is much better now.
Okay.
Number two, the political parties also fail because there is some politics of patronage. Who do you sponsor as a party to be a member of parliament? If they don't like my face, they may not push for me to be a member of parliament candidate. So the politics of patronage is there. It is there.
I agree with you, Speaker.
Fine.
I would like to.
Finally.
Oh, you find that? Okay. You want
Finally.
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 I wanted to refer to Mr. Busha's comment on the same.
Finally, outside the politicians in parliament, outside the politicians in the political parties, among the electorate, I am involved in the creation of some dialogue. I've received delegates, very powerful delegates from churches, from civil society, and some of them wanted facilitation to meet His Excellency. I facilitated as part of the process outside Parliament. And I'm engaging people from all types of political persuasion, very quietly. So I won't go into details about that. No details.
Thank you.
We are
not asking.
But you will see results very soon. Whether SADC comes in or doesn't come on, I am very convinced that we shall have our national dialogue for the sake of the people of Zimbabwe.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Busha, you gave us an exercise. I know that, and then there's a question that was asked. Please respond to that question so we do justice to that, but I want to link after you've responded. Maybe I should ask that before you respond to the question. You gave us an exercise of that, the four leaders, including oneself. It is typical of Zimbabweans that we do not want to address the current situation. I would have replaced Mr. Mugabe with President Mnangagwa. Why did you not do that? Why did you choose the past president? I'm going to ask the next question, but why did you not put our president?
PS, the last one, President Idi Mnangagwa. Can you just write that question as well? And we'll give you the results at the cocktail. Please just add President Mnangagwa. I done that actually intentionally, but I wanted you to ask that question. Please add President Mnangagwa. So we are here now in this environment, and the question was, what are our options, our choices? I'm going to give context. You are a shareholder. You then, know that the company is in distress. You go to an AGM, you vote for the CEO and the executive to remain. Then the company continue to lose and to lose market share and to lose. Then there's another AGM. Then again, you vote to retain the same executive. Do you understand? I'm still gonna give you the solutions. So these are the two scenarios. You asked me to say, what are our options? So there's new changes and what are our choices? Then the second one, and it's unfortunate again, and I love President Zuma and I respect him with all due respect, but I'm gonna use him as a case study again, as an example in this. So in SA, the citizens voted for Mr. Zuma facing 763 charges of corruption, rape, and all sorts of charges, right? Then they expect him to change when he was president. and then he remained himself as Zuma. Then people start complaining. So the same here in Zimbabwe. We have got a government or a system that has been running Zimbabwe for 38 years. We then get a chance every 5 years to vote for them. And then we vote for them and they don't change, and then we complain. We have got guys who have been ministers since 1980. Then we want change. So in other words, you're going to play Mugowe by Leonard Lembo, Shakata, and then you want to hear a different message all the time you play Mugowe. It does not work. Whether it's Mugowe or Shakata, it does not work. With due respect to the liberation movement and my senior here, Advocate Mudenda, you know, so and he also in his speech talks about Gorbachev. I don't talk about Gorbachev. I talk about Obama now. Recent leaders that understand the new world. Okay, so we need a different set of skills in Zimbabwe. People who understand money, asset allocation, who understand the balance sheet, to be able to understand how to address the twin deficit he talked about. So we need a new set of skills, know-how, and to create new industries that can basically generate jobs. You can't promote jobs without saying what new industries you bring.
Can I come in there just for you to answer that? We have a problem, and I'm connecting the dots between the two honorables here. There's our executive, our decision makers, the executive is chosen from Parliament. We've had some views here. And part of the view that the speaker raised is that we don't have enough people like you who are becoming members of Parliament so that you become the Minister of Trade and Commerce. And therefore, we elevate the wrong people to be in the executive. What sayeth you there? Because we could sit here and analyze this problem. But until we start changing the narrative by our own participation, we will be here year after year analyzing the problem. And now guess what is happening? We'll have another round table playing Chitekete here. And we'll be saying, yeah, but we dance the same tune. What has changed? What has not changed is our participation to make sure that we respond to what the speaker was talking about. What is your comment? You who are custodian of capital and you are scared, timid, and don't want to be involved in. I saw the two heads here, the two honorables here nodding their heads that we must get involved. But what is your point?
In terms of involvement?
Yeah. Okay. So, because these CEOs here, they have to start also saying what is our part to play? Because we're talking about the development of Zimbabwe, and he said you cannot develop without joining the politics of the country and participating and influencing them. And you are sitting there in a nice cushioned environment, and you say, sort yourself out there. And it's not working. It hasn't been working.
Thank you, Doctor. So you're all aware, and I'm assured that in 2023 you vote for me. That I was number 3, technically, in the last elections. So I was the presidential candidate. That shows that, I raised my hand because I realized I needed to come and contribute.
And well done
to Zimbabwe.
Well done.
Now, one of to answer the gentleman directly, and then I'll come through to say, behind the scenes, what proposals have we made to make sure that Zimbabwe moves forward? We need to persuade.
Before you go on, how many votes did you have?
Doctor, let's talk about percentages.
We need light moments, but carry on.
So we need to be able to persuade. There is trust deficit. Now, to answer you directly, let's try and persuade government and engage them. Let's volunteer. That's a call to action I think Advocate called for. Let's build strategic alliances with other businesses outside Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe is going to turn the corner. We need to do that. Now, behind the scenes, I've made a proposal, and the Chief Encouragement Officer is here. Okay. Zimbabwe has got the largest lithium deposits in Africa, and the 4th in the world. He talked about Tesla, and I'm saying, why can't we create the biggest industry of renewable energy in Zimbabwe using lithium, which can be used in our cell phones everywhere, solar energy. Why are we not doing it? Why can't we create a new industry with the whole value chain of beneficiation? I spoke to Mete, the biggest battery producer in South Africa listed. They've just set up a plant in Kenya. I said the CEO and the FD, why not setting up a plant in Zimbabwe? Because we've got lithium and everything else. Why? There's policy uncertainty. There's political uncertainty. So those are the issues I'm doing behind the scenes. So I've made proposals long ago, from about 2000, but I think government is not listening. I think if Dr. Kayamol was here, Kayamol, our former ambassador to SA, I went to his office countless of times, to the embassy, to say this is what we need to do to be able to take it Zimbabwe forward. So I won't say all the things I've done behind the scenes, but certainly I think those are some of the suggestions. There's no know-how in government, and with due respect to the former Minister of Finance, is a lawyer. So, we want people who can understand what is the employment of capital.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. With the powers that are vested in me, I was going to get some more questions, but I need to have an eyeball-to-eyeball with my chairman. He's telling me that is time up now. But I hope that this interaction and this engagement has helped to pick out some of the issues. I certainly admire the three speakers, the way you have been very forthright, very candid.
Sorry, can I interject?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes, Chair.
The feedback I'm getting from the stockholders is that you can go for another round of questions.
Oh, okay.
They say that we have come here to contribute.
Oh, there's been a coup in the house. There's been a coup in the house whilst I've been. So anyway, all right. So let's start here. I'd love to hear from the ladies. I'd love to hear from the ladies. Where are they? I can't see because I'm blocked. That's a gentleman's head. Okay, there you are. Right here. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Your name and then your question.
My name is Mandas Marikanda, and we're just following the discussions as they were going on. And pardon me, I was part of the discussion, Pastor Shingi, at HICC. That was my first time to attend the round table. There was a function. And one of the discussions at that particular meeting was when the CEOs discussed and said, let's present a position to government in terms of our contribution. Sorry, this one is, I want to see the chairman in front. He was blocking me. So there was a presentation. I know I left that meeting, but there were points that were picked. And there was a professor of Queens and then the different people that we did that. I appreciated that. And today's meeting, I appreciate everything that has been said here, but I'm picking it as if when we come here, for some of us it was a very costly investment to come here. So I appreciate when deliberations are done, presentations are done, but it would be awkward if we were to come here and all we do is to listen to specific perspectives. Because the question that I raised in that particular meeting was, what are we doing as CEOs? Are we being acted upon only and responding to things as they're coming through? And if we are this kind of passive, even at a CEO's conference, then that is very wrong. Because you need to hear other voices. Yes, time has run out, but I also know the passion that comes through it. But and I know you can't do much to me because on the gender card you are supposed to protect me, so I can be provocative as much as I can. So the point that I think we need to do is this is exactly what politics has been doing. They have been talking, these guys. Tendai Biti has been talking, we've been hearing him throughout. But it's an opportunity. Hear what the CEOs are saying here. Give us an opportunity to speak out. This is an opportunity to do that. If others do not want to speak, then that is fine. But I honestly think The big debate can't be just about politics. We are in this environment, polarized as it is, but we are running business. We are towing the line between the extremes that are fighting for this. Yes, we have interests here, and I wouldn't take it away from some of the people who are here as you are presenting. You are actually towing a certain line, but know that there are certain people who want to tow a middle line. And we make a living, we are mothers, we are CEOs, and we are making a living in this polarized environment. The question then becomes, what do we do? What's the big debate? Is it just about politics? Are we waiting for that debate, for that dialogue to happen? If it doesn't happen, then what? Then what? So, clap hands for me.
See, that's what happens when you allow the ladies to speak. Another lady, thank you very much, Ms. Marikanda. I think that was poignant. And that was probably, you have also vindicated my stress levels here. I really would have wanted to hear more about what is there, but time constraints. Another lady, I can't see, please just speak. If you're a lady, just go for it.
I'm not a lady, but I think
we are looking for ladies.
Like to be what? Hold on.
We are looking for ladies.
I'm talking on behalf of my mother. I'm talking on behalf of my mother.
There's a lady.
That in spite of the current conditions, the polarization.
Are you the lady?
Budget elections, disputed elections, sanctions, and so on. But the CEO roundtable organizers were able to mobilize thousands of dollars to bring people here. They were able to mobilize human capital to bring people here. They didn't wait for anything to change. So the question is, there is a solution to our crisis that does not require us to wait for foreign direct investment. There is a solution to our crisis that does not require us to wait for the next budget, for the removal of sanctions, for a change in political circumstances, for donor aid, because we are able to do. So the example that the CEO roundtable organizers have given us is, we need a common vision. We are able to mobilize resources. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent by people coming here. We are able to mobilize human capital. But what is it that we need to do after we've mobilized resources and human capital? How do we do it? And we say we have the answer. Thank you.
Hello.
Okay, all right.
I'm now
that was a
speaking
contribution. All right, the one who was speaking on behalf of your mother.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Simon Golden, the CEO Roundtable member. My question is directed to Honorable Biti. I'm saying, why can't we emulate the Kenyan scenario where there was an issue of legitimacy and Odinga inaugurating himself as the president, disputing the elections, but they put Kenya first, which is bigger than individuals. My question is, why can't we emulate that and move forward as a people to prosper our motherland, our fatherland, so that we leave a legacy for other coming generations? Every 5 years, we are in a cycle of political despondency, of political disagreements, polarization. We are prisoners of politicians who are denying us to prosper as business people. But you are pursuing your own political careers at the expense of the future. The future is not for us. The future is for other generations which are coming after you. We are going to pass out of this land, but the motherland needs other people who want to find this land in a better shape. My other comment is to the Honorable Speaker. You said why business are not involved in politics. I think there were so many tweets against our esteemed CEO, Keynote founder, Masiwa. When he made a statement of sanctions, he was attacked left, right, and center by the likes of Mavinga and many more others. So when you try to position yourself to a certain political party, your business is attacked, left, right, and center. To such an extent, some people will say, don't use Econet because of that. So we are in a polarized in society environment where business, you cannot associate with a political party. You do that, you find your Zimbabwean people coming to knock your doors, submit bills, all certain things. Also, Mr. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Tendai Biti, there's something which was circulating, which was purported to be coming from you about the issue of currency, which was said you said there was going to be currency, new currency, which was going to come in next week. I don't know how much true. Is that you or somebody else? And you know how much dangerous is that? We lost money out of a statement which was made by now the Minister of Finance while he was in Switzerland. The rest started shooting up just out of a statement of saying the bond notes are going to be removed by December. And people started responding. I thank you. God bless you.
Okay. Let me just get one more, and then we'll bring it back to the panelists. There was a hand here. You've been dying to say something. Let me shift to this end.
No, unfortunately, one of the Chadwana Ngoni is my name. One of the comments they've already been made, I wanted to answer Advocate Mudenda about businesses participating in politics is because of the polarization. Some of the people are afraid to even sponsor politicians because they fear if you sponsor of the wrong camp, you may actually be targeted for that. And I also wanted to ask if you really have got a solution from the arms of the state. From what the honorables were saying, that it seems there is no independence in the other arm of the state, like the parliament. I heard the Speaker of Parliament was referring to having to go to the head of state to ask if he can invoke his own laws in terms of charging the executives who are not coming to parliament. Is it supposed to be like that? Or we are just supposed to charge the executives who are not coming to do what they're supposed to do? Do we have to go and get authority from another arm of the... No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just trying to find out if we've got any solution so that we can see how bad the situation we are in. And lastly, just like on the politicians themselves, when they were discussing about issues to do with the MPs, parliamentarians, and stuff like that, is there willingness within the political establishment to do away with the whipping system? Because from what I've noted as well, you're saying from the committees, the parliamentarians, they actually agreeing that we need to move in this direction. But when it's voting time, then they are whipped into line. Are the political parties willing to change that part of the constitution so that a certain parliamentary can actually vote freely in parliament, not being told what to say, to toe a party line so that they don't lose their position in parliament? Are the politicians themselves, the Bitis of this world and the other political individuals of this nation, are you willing to deal with that part of the constitution so that you are not whipped when you are in parliament?
Okay, I think at this point, I would like to bring it back, and I would like to balance the two centers of power that are emerging. There is the government of the meeting, which is with Reverend Mazonde, and there is the chairman of the conference that is with Mr. Bina. So we have both. One is pushing that we must give more time. The other one says, look, we must wind up. So I need to be whipped into line maybe, or I'm behaving like the Speaker of Parliament, where his struggle is, what does he need to do? So anyway, I'll use my own discretion to wind this up. There was a contribution by Ms. Marikanda that the perspectives of business are not being heard. I want to hear this from maybe particularly from Honorable Biti. You've been a member of parliament
for the longest part. Sometimes in, sometimes out, but there's a sense that you guys are hogging the light at the expense of progress. This game is about politicians, and there is no sense that you want to accommodate other players. In this case, it is business. So there is that. What saith you there? The mic. I know you are saying I'm misrepresenting you, but I am trying to get a question going because you contributed a lot, and actually you didn't ask a question to anyone. Yeah, so I am just asking that question, ma'am, and that is my job as a moderator.
Well, I can speak for most of us who are in the trenches that, on the contrary, we actually feel that there's not sufficient persons and activists from outside the mainstream political circles who are actually engaging. So we actually feel that business people, the church, the student movement, where some of us came from, we actually feel that we actually need more actors, more voices to play a part in our political landscape. And because there's no one who is more equal than the other. There's no one who is more Zimbabwean than the other. So we would welcome very strong positions from business, very strong positions and engagement from the church and from civic society. And many of the people, you take Honorable Mona, who is there, he's a businessman. I run a law firm, but I think that you can speak out without the risk. They can arrest you, they can what? When everything being normal, you should be able to stand up and live with your conscience. So I would want to throw the bucket, you guys. I would want to throw the bucket, you guys. And from where I sit at, and I was saying this to Oswald, we see you as people who rationalize obscenity, we rationalize terrible decisions. As a lawyer, just to give you one example, as a lawyer, I struggled to get a client who would challenge the actual indigenization provisions. Everyone just cowered. You call it managing the environment, and you substitute that. Managing the environment is really cowardice that is being marinated. So I think that you guys need to stand up, and you don't need permission from anyone. You don't need permission from anyone. Business has to be vociferous. Business has to be at the forefront, because when the crisis happens, you are at the forefront. You lost your billions in 2008. You are losing billions now